Have you ever caught yourself saying, I'm just lazy. I'm so stupid. I've always been bad at following through. I need to be more disciplined. Sometimes those sentences feel so true that we don't even question them. We say them like facts. No, not opinions, not interpretations, facts. And what if those weren't the first stories about you? What if they were the stories you learned? Welcome to Latine ADHD podcast. I'm your host, psychologist, Dr. Janice Castro. As a reminder, this podcast and this episode is not a replacement for therapy. So throughout this season 6, we're exploring one big question. What changes when the story you tell yourself starts to change? On season 6, episode 1, Emily shared what it's like to know something felt different for years before finally receiving an explanation. And her story got me thinking that before we ever learn about mental health, before we learn words like executive functioning, dopamine, chemicals, many of us have already learned stories about ourselves. Today, I want us to become curious about where those stories come from. When we're kids, we don't decide what's true about us. We use or borrow the opinions of the adults around us. Parents, teachers, coaches, extended family, culture, school, friends, religion. Eventually, those outside voices slowly become our inside voice. Examples that maybe you heard. Why can't you sit still? You always forget. You're so dramatic. You have so much potential. You just need to try harder. You never finish anything. Maybe nobody intended those comments to become part of your identity. Yet children don't hear repetition as just repetition. They hear it as truth. And our brains naturally look for patterns, especially when we're young. If enough people describe us the same way over and over again, eventually we begin describing ourselves that way too. And this becomes even more nuanced when we think about culture. I myself, as a first generation Latina, I have experiences where culture has impacted how I see myself. Now, I want to make it clear that this isn't about blaming Latina culture. It's not about blaming parents or our grandparents, our ancestors. Most families teach what helped them survive in their generation. Some examples include working hard. Don't complain. Be humble. Be grateful. Keep pushing. Respect authority. Respect your elders. Don't waste opportunities. Those weren't random messages. Many came from the stories of immigration, assimilation, sacrifice, economic hardship, discrimination, fear, love, and protection. Parents wanted opportunities that they never had. They wanted stability. They wanted safety, success. And those messages made sense. And many still do. The challenge isn't that those messages existed. The challenge is what happened when ADHD entered the picture. Imagine your brain genuinely struggles with organization, starting tasks, being forgetful, managing your feelings, But nobody knows or understands your struggle. Instead, people only see what's happening on the outside. So what's happening on the outside looks like late homework, a messy room, forgetting assignments, interrupting others, emotional reactions that are seen as dramatic, starting projects or hobbies but never finishing them, missing deadlines. So what explanation do people reach for? They're lazy, they don't care, they're irresponsible, they're not trying, they're disrespectful, they're wasting their potential. Eventually, you stop hearing those explanations from other people because now you're saying them to yourself. That's how misunderstandings slowly become your identity and how you see yourself. These stories become part of who we think we are. One of the fascinating things about our brains is that repetition creates familiarity. And familiarity feels true. It feels safe. It's predictable. Because our brains love predictability. They love answers, not open loops. And the familiarity may feel true, not because something is objectively true, but because we've heard it so many times. And identity isn't formed overnight. It's built one repeated experience at a time. One teacher, one parent, one report card, one forgotten assignment, one comparison, one criticism, one misunderstanding. Over years, those moments add up and it becomes a story. A story isn't necessarily a lie, but it also isn't necessarily the whole truth. Maybe you really did struggle. Maybe people really were frustrated with you. Maybe assignments really were late. Those things happen. Ain't no denying it. But the explanation attached to them, the idea that the explanation is you're lazy, you're broken, you don't care, that may never have been the most accurate explanation. So this week, I don't want you to argue with your story. I don't want you to replace it with a more positive one. I simply want you to become more curious. Think of one sentence you've been telling yourself for years. Maybe it's, I'm lazy, I'm too much, I'm bad at following through, or I should be able to handle this. Then try these 3 simple steps. First, name the story. So finish this sentence. I am, and just choose one. Second, ask yourself, where did I learn this story? Maybe it came from something someone said. Maybe it came from experiences you had over and over again. Maybe it came from expectations you felt you could never quite meet. And maybe you don't know yet. And that's okay too. You don't need to find the exact moment the story started. And third, ask yourself, what if this isn't the whole story? You don't have to answer that question today. You don't have to figure out what the new story is either. And you don't have to convince yourself that everything you believed was wrong. Just leave a little room for curiosity. If it helps, write the story in your notes app, say it out loud, or think about it the next time you're taking a walk. It's one story that you tell yourself and 3 steps. Name it, trace it, and question it. In Spanish, that would be nómbralo, trázalo, y cuestiónalo. Y'all got a little Spanish language education in here too. Sometimes seeing yourself differently doesn't start with finding a new answer. It begins with questioning an old explanation. Thank you so much for spending part of your day with me. If today's episode resonated with you, I'd love for you to share it with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, the stories we inherit can help us survive, but they don't always help us understand ourselves. I'll see you next time.